segment, or not final, second to final segment with our sheriff, and we can take phone calls, 737-7587. So you checked, and it turns out, I guess, the suspect in this case in St. Thomas is not in behavioral care right now.
Right.
It may be early, but he's got 4 pretty serious charges. So.
And that's my bet. We can look when we get back on as to what the. But yeah, the goal of the program also was that the individual has to be able to be stabilized, and obviously we're trying to figure out the release plan of this, where you're going next and what's out there. And one of the difficult things, if it's a very serious charge, of course, is the DA's office is aware that the facility is not a locked down, behind doors, secure environment. This is a treatment environment where we're trying to ensure that your well-being there, but also that you're transitioning back into the community. Most, I think 60–70% of these people are on some form of medication. In the streets, they're way off their meds. They're destabilized. We bring them in here and try to get that stabilized. They're provided up to 3 weeks of medication when they leave. There's a release plan for follow-up treatment when you leave here. And so the idea is to get you back on track. If a person in this case who is, multiple felonies, the DA very well may say at this point that's not someone we want to put in the treatment program, because when they leave, they don't go back to jail. They go to the streets from here.
So that's why it's more selective.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about another case. Just I don't know how much you know about this, but we know scheduled for trial, I think now in January, which could be postponed, is the Caitlin Kaufman case. There was a hearing the past week or so ago with 2 of the suspects who I believe are incarcerated in the jail there. And I just wanted to get a sense from you. First of all, do you guys work any form? I guess when you transport the inmates to the courthouse, do you provide some security while they're there?
That's a great question.
So the question is, as you saw, Caitlin Kaufman's father, and I totally understand where he was coming from, was very upset. Looked like he was going to go after the suspects when they brought courtroom, and he was removed, and later, I believe, returned, and there were no problems. This case, you realize how high profile it is, how emotional it is, and the situation with the father. Have you had to up the game when it comes to transporting these 2 individuals?
So it's a great question, very complicated answer, but it's as simple. The sheriff by law is required to secure the courthouse. So we are the people running security when you check to come in and go. That's our people that are securing the building. So when you walk in today, the first person you're going to see is a sheriff's office person searching you. The law, believe it or not, in 1996, we had an attorney general's opinion that said, but once you get inside the courtroom, not the courthouse, but the courtroom, in criminal courts, which you know what that means, the higher level courts, that courtroom is the responsibility of the judge. So hypothetically, if you walk up there right now and you have a heart attack and fall in the courtroom, it's the judge's court officer's job. If you fall out in the hallway, it's our job.
Okay.
Just to kind of help you. Now, that's the public side of what you see. Behind the scenes, we're moving all the inmates. So we move all the inmates, they go down to the basement of the Birch building, they're in the basement, and then when their case is called, there's elevators, and then they're run up to the certain courtrooms. And so that tunneling system, if you will, which is really elevators, we're running all of that. But when you arrive to the floor, you see these people dressed in civilian clothes. Those are court officers that work for that particular judge, and we hand the inmate over to that person behind that door.
So they're the ones that handled it when the father had that outburst, right?
That's right.
What did you think when you saw the outburst?
As a parent, I fully understand every bit of that. I mean, I don't know how people do what they do. So as a parent, I have a tremendous amount of empathy for, oh my gosh, that side of it. From a security standpoint, I thought they did fantastic. And I watched what they did. I thought they even, and I don't know the family at all, I'm not saying that, but it sounds like they calmed down enough to also be able to participate in the rest of the week or whatever was going on. So I thought that was well handled. It's a situation that each judge at that level has 6 people. Now, they don't all use them for security. Some use them for clerks and other things. But so in general sessions, where all cases go, right, originally, we do all of that. We're carrying the inmate in and out of every courtroom. But when you get to criminal court, it's one of those 6 people. Now, you'll notice you'll see uniforms in most courtrooms. Those are our staff adding assistance and help, especially in the high-profile cases. But by law and by definition, that room is the responsibility of the court officer of the judge.
So moving forward, the trial is going to be scheduled. These 2 defendants, Do you have an inkling? Are they now in isolation cells? Do you have an idea of where these two would be kept in a case like this?
Yeah, so I haven't looked specifically, but here's what should happen. They shouldn't be housed together in the same housing unit. Typically, if you're going to be charged in the same type of deal, the separation's important for your safety, ours, everything else, but also it's better you don't sit in there planning what you're going to say and do. So there's a little bit of it. Their nature of their charge, obviously high profile, it's also murder charges, is probably a maximum custody or maximum classification, which leads me to believe they're across the street in the downtown detention center. I would suspect in one of the main housing units. That's two reasons. One is it's easier to feed them into the courtroom. I mean, that's walking across the street and so forth. And their custody level is such that they won't belong on Harding Place. The only thing that changes that sometimes a person who is awaiting trial is also convicted previously of something else. You see this parole violator. When you come back in, that parole is now re-upped. So you're shipped off to prison because you're back in the state system, awaiting trial on your new charge. So I haven't looked at that, but they could be at the prison because of a previous conviction that they're finishing out. I haven't read that, but that's one alternative to them staying with us.
Will there be, moving forward, when the trial comes, though, and you're aware of this, this is such an emotional case, and I don't know if sometimes threats occur, you know, do you have to take any special steps sometimes for certain cases as opposed to others because of the emotion and the potential for just, who knows what might happen?
So, Nick, 30 years ago, I don't know. I was a peon in the middle of the jail, and my job was to assign people where they're going to house. We call it classification, housing and people. And I was doing my job. And the reality was, in this situation, I should have known that Nick Beres and Daron Hall testified against each other in a drug deal in the courtroom. And so when they came back from court, we're just moving bodies. I didn't have real reason. We didn't have a very sophisticated system. And so I housed you and I in the same general housing unit, and you beat the tar out of me because I had testified against you. And so the very next day, as you roll them back into the courtroom for sentencing, I had, or I forgot who beat who in our case, but in the courtroom, here's this person who had been assaulted multiple times by the other person. So I tell this story a lot because I was suspended because I messed up I didn't do my job right. And I've always told people that. People don't really realize this. This case, because one may testify against each other, that's risky for us. The fact that family and he are at odds, or them, are clear, but we're used to that. Right, most victims are upset about what's happened, and so that we kind of get used to that. The me and you problems behind the wall is and gang-related and other issues are very dangerous and very difficult to manage. I think we're pretty good at the public to the population. We're searching everyone coming to the courthouse. We're aware of what's going on usually, but what's unknown is who's testifying against each other and what that information led to.
So what will you do then in this case? Are you anything special when it approaches trial day?
Try to keep them apart. It should be the goal clearly if there's one, and I haven't followed a whole lot about who's saying what about the other.
Yeah, well, it's not clear yet what, but that probably will happen.
It will, and then we try to move that one to prison once he testifies. You know, so you try to split that part of it up, and then obviously be keenly aware of what's going on in the courtroom itself. We are searching. That father who walked in that building was searched by us. And so we have to trust that we're searching in case there was anything on weapon on his person. And then he gets all the way up there, and then he gets all the way into the courtroom, and then his outburst was handled by the court officers. But I mean, what we need to make sure of is that we're searching people coming in the building so there's no weapons or things that could be used upstairs. And the people who are in that courtroom, obviously, I think handled themselves very well and controlled him.
The precautions in place worked.
It worked.
Yeah, he was not armed, and again, I'm with you. I understand in that moment he probably didn't want to do that, but you see that it looked like one of the suspects, you know, smirked, you know, and that's going to send you over the edge.
I'm not proud of this. There's just no way I could sit and watch and go through what is, I think, the smirking and other parts, and just even hearing. I mean, I've sat through many trials or witnessed and watched pieces of it as you do a lot, and you know, just the violent nature of the loss of life and kind of the devaluing of life. I mean, and how simple. I mean, the Waffle House stuff always comes to mind, but I won't ever forget as long as I live. I was brand new here 30-something years ago, and I was assigned to sit through a case in the courthouse, and a guy in our building had a lot of issues, William Scott Day, and he killed Mary Catherine Strobel. And one of the more bizarre, wow, and he killed her, put her in his trunk and drove around, was pulled over multiple times on the interstate, the body wasn't found. She was a great lady, great family, and I won't ever forget, I sit through the whole thing, and this guy he was a serial killer. He went on to kill multiple people in Texas and Oklahoma. But anyway, you know, the Strobel family stood up that last day, I won't ever forget, and begged the court not to give him the death penalty. And you know, I just, you know, I don't care what you think about the death penalty. I say this all the time. I'm against it because it's not done right. If someone in my family's killed or harmed, I'm for it. And what I mean by that is, I think everyone who does that to people should, if that were the rule, I could get there. What I don't like is I don't see rich people dying. And so I don't feel like it's equitable. So, but I'm not, as a person, as a family member, to me, I don't know what I could ever, and I saw this family, the Strobel, stand up and say, you know, that's not the sentence that we prefer, and here's why. And I've told Father Strobel and I are really good friends, and I've told him that he changed my whole view of.
Yeah.
I mean,
people like that, it's amazing because the anger and the feelings. I kind of see it your way, but then you have families like that, and they've got a lot of grace.
No kidding.
Listen, we'll take a break, come back. Final segment with Sheriff Daron Hall right after this.